All right, welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude and part 2 of the Weekend Edition BF 109 E3 148 scale by Eduard. So where we left off last time was got all the cockpit stuff done. And then I was going to go into painting and then continue on. But most of these parts here, we have more parts that actually go with the cockpit, and there's more that use the same color, the RLM2. So I'm going to go ahead and put this stuff together. So let's slide that stuff out of the way. First thing we need is the D sprue instead of the E sprue for a change. We're moving on. So we need D11, D12, which is here and here. So we'll cut those off. And D37, which is here. Okay. So we'll trim those little bits off. Like thusly. Get all this stuff snippulated off of there. Then the old handy dandy 400 grit sanding stick. Make sure those edges are smooth. Make sure these ends are smooth. Like that. And that. All right, and then we can glue them together. So they have some, wow, handy dandy locating pins. That's kind of weird. So that glues on there like that. And then this glues on there. So we'll do this first. Those parts fit together really good. Very tight fit. So I'm going to have to, I want to make sure that plenty of cement gets down in there. So I'm gonna give it just a little bit of room there. So the cement will get inside of there, and then boom, like that. All right, and then this piece goes here. So I am going to use my thicker cement. For there. See, this stuff's nice because it gives you time to position it. like that. No locating pins or anything on this one, so you gotta be careful. All right, so there's that. So then we need D7 and D39. D7 and D39, which is somewhere. There it is. Like that. So this is the only part of this step here that I'm going to be demonstrating the cleaning and cutting and cleaning. After this, I'll be doing it off camera to save a little time. Just doing it since this is the initial segment of this video. Okay, do a little bit of sanding like that. This one's kind of curved, so all right, so we got that. So now I understand why there's these two dimples in there. That goes there. Now this, I can use the extra thin like thusly. So, quick question, if you guys would answer in the bottom in the comments, how's this camera angle seem to be working? I'm constantly trying different camera angles because I always want to make sure I get a decent view for everyone. Okay, and then this part goes in there, all nice and snugly, like that. But if you let me know in the comment section, it seems to be working pretty good just in looking at it. It looks like because my lens, the location of my lens, which is here, the angle, I'm not blocking it with my fingers. That's always seems to be my trouble, is like when my hands get in the way. So, seems to be working. So if you guys would let me know in the comments, I'd appreciate it. Let me know that it's working okay. We'll see how it works whenever I start doing paint and stuff. All right, so there's that. Okay. So then, we'll set that aside. So then we need to cut off E22 and F2. So that's black. That's okay. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to do this part here and paint this separately and then glue it on once everything's ready to go into the fuselage. So I really don't need to do anything with that other than put it on here. So we'll get D8, D38, and E22. So we need to go back to that E sprue. And get 22. And then back to the D sprue and get D8, which is this. Whoa. Okay, get some sanding going on there. Got that. A little bit there. That one's kind of thicker, so I need to knife that one off. Then we'll get this like that. All right. So what do, oh, and then I need D38. Almost forgot that one. And that is this one here. These have some really big sprue gates here. Easily removed. Okay. So this fits on here like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this with my tweezers to glue it because I don't want to get fingerprint on it. Like that. Make sure it's pressed up there correctly. That looks pretty good. All right, so this piece here goes on top here. Now we've got this little square pin goes in that, well, it's not really square, it's rectangular pin goes in that rectangular hole. This part here rests on top of that. So let's make sure that it fits. And oh, it does. See, I like that real positive connection. Now, before I get all crazy with that, though, I want to make sure this is straight smooth here, because I'm not sure if anything glues on there, and I want to make sure it's nice and flat. Splendid. Okay. So, let's see now. This goes like that. Okay, so then we'll put a little bit of cement there. I gotta get used to having this new bottle of cement. It's nice and full. Okay, so we'll push that into place like that. Make sure. Another thing about this camera angle is it's a lot easier. You see me drifting this way a little bit. It's because I'm used to doing that because of my old camera angle. This way, if I just stay over my X, my marker, I'm pretty much going to stay in frame. So, take me a little bit to get used to it. All right, so that's good. So, the next thing I need to do is this. Glues on here. That fits in there like that. So once I get this stuff glued, I can paint it, but I'm going to need to do some detail painting and the decals. So we'll get this like that. All right, so that's done. That looks dandy. I think, however, let's see, I need to look and see if that little bit of a seam needs to be sanded or scraped, or if it's, no, it doesn't. Because in looking at the instructions here, you can see that there is a seam there, so I'm not going to remove that. All right, so I think with that, okay, so here's where you have to make a decision. Are you going to have the engine and gun cowlings open or closed? So it says for after all this is done, the engine and all that, once that is done, then you are to skip to page 10, where it will tell you what you need to do if you want to have it buttoned up. Okay, so there's page 10 right there. Doesn't make much sense to me, but hey, we shall figure that out. Yeah, see, open nose, looks like you're going to have a lot more details to assemble. If you're doing a closed, you're not going to need all of that. So we'll just have to take a look at it. But for now, I think I can, I think I'll go ahead. I'm going to cut out this part as well, because that needs to be painted in the same color as these other components. So let me cut that out. That is part number 11. Yeah, 11. So cut that out. Get that cleaned up, and we'll be ready to paint. Okay, so paint. There we go. So now I have a color chart. Actually, I have a couple of different ones. I've got a color chart that shows how to mix colors, RLM colors, and then I have another chart that has equivalents. Now, this one is a mix. I can't find my chart, so I can't tell you where I got it. I think it was IPMS Stockholm, I believe. You can look it up. They have a really good mixing chart for all kinds of colors, but in this case, RLM colors. So I have that, and then I have another chart that I found somewhere else. And I think, man, I just can't remember where I got it. I'm sorry, guys. I'll try and look. But anyway, it gives equivalents. So RLM2, you go across. Oh, XF22. So if you're not like a real, I mean, there's people that are super stickler for RLM colors. I'm not one of those people, but at the time I didn't know there was a, to me, a color that was mostly considered an equivalent, so I mixed up my own. But XF22 is the color, and in looking at the actual paint in this jar and the color I mixed up, they're really, really close. So I'm not going to use the XF22 just because actually this is the one I mixed up some time ago, and this one I mixed up actually quite a while ago. It's been a few years, and I mixed it up for one of my other Luftwaffe projects. But as you can see, it's a pretty good color, and it's nice, and got a good viscosity. It's not real watery, and it's somewhat thick. And if I remember correctly, generally I do 1 part paint, 1 part thinner. So kind of a 50-50 mix. But what I've also begun doing in the recent past is I will mix Tamiya XF22 clear an equal amount. So 1 part paint, 1 part X20A thinner, and 1 part X22 clear gloss. And what that does is that gives me a paint with a little bit of sheen to it, and it takes weathering better. And it's good for doing decals. There's a lot of people that, you know, like to have a gloss coat for their decals. I'm not one of those people, but, you know, if it's there, I'll do it. I won't go out of my way. The main reason I do this mixture is for weathering purposes. So, taking my handy dandy HP M2, recently repaired, and I'm going to use, since this is already 1 part thinner, 1 part paint, I'll use half of whatever I take out of this that I use from this bottle. I'll use half the amount of clear. So let me get that mixed up. So what I use for my mix is I use my 50-50 mix of the RLM 02 made from Tamiya paints and X28 thinner. I use 10 milliliters or 1 milliliter, 0.5 milliliters of the X22 clear. That gives me my 1:1:1 ratio, or whatever you want to call it. Hope I explained that right. Not, sorry. So here's what I'm going to do. I get a glove, and I'm going to start spraying this stuff. And I think that the back of the, yes, the back of the fuselage needs to be painted this color as well. So here we go. Okay, so let's do this first. Okay, so here we go. Let's do these. Let's get the fuselage out of the way first. All right, so let's start with the small stuff. Now, for those of you that watch my channel, you know that I am a stickler for primer. In this case, I'm not using primer on the cockpit. Okay, so there's my color. Looks really good. I like it. Okay, then we need to do this side of this. And then whenever I go to start putting this together, I'll scrape the paint off the portions that have contact with other pieces for painting or for cementing. Top part right there, I do not believe that is this color, but I'm just going to paint over it. And we'll go ahead and spray that as well. That's where the decal is going to go. This in here is supposed to be that color. Again, we'll probably have to scrape some paint off when I glue it. Okay, so there's that. In the actual cockpit. Oh man. Had to change up my holder here. That toothpick with the blue tack wasn't working. Trying to keep it in frame here, but it's kind of hard. That looks pretty good. Set that aside now. We'll do this. We got that. And we've got there's that. And that. All right, so there we go. So now we can let that dry. All right, so now it's time to do a little bit of detail painting. So first thing I'm going to paint is this panel right here, and from online. Now I'll probably paint this like completely wrong, but I'm just using some online resources, and the few that I've seen is this panel right here is silver with black knobs on it. So I'm going to paint it silver first, and then that's all it's silver on that side. So what I'm using, what? Airbrush colors. Yes, I'm using airbrush colors because they work really well with a paintbrush. So I just put a little drop on the top of my one of my little cups here, and we'll go to town. This is very harrowing, painting little things like this. As you can see, it's working pretty good. Now this stuff also airbrushes really well. Now here's something to remember when you're painting this stuff is oh, that's beautiful. Let me clean my brush. All right, next up is some black stuff. I'm using NATO Black Model Air. So looks like in looking at some of the illustrations here, these two things here are black. That will have yellow caps on it. And then this piece here, here, and here are black. So we'll do those. Let's do this one first. And then this handle on top is going to be silver, but I'll do that after I do this. So I'll have to get my silver out again. So I'm showing you what I'm doing here. I may not paint all of this on camera because it is tedious, and it will take up a lot of time because I paint very slowly, as you can see. So you see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera, and we'll come back. All right, so I got the details painted. I got a little bit of weathering done inside of here with some chipping. Paint chipping with using a brush, I'm not very good at. I'm a little bit better at the hairspray thing, but anyway, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a wash, a black wash inside of, normally I wouldn't do black on a color like this, but since it's going to be all closed up, I want there to be a lot of contrast. So using uh, 502 Untitled ABT 110 black, I'm going to make me some black wash. So I'm going to use this Untitled 502 odorless thinner. Any odorless thinner will do. It's just I got it all at the same time. Once this is empty, I'll be switching over to my bulk brand. So let's see what we can do here. I'll get my, I use these little cheap testers brushes. You can buy them for like ultra cheap for a pack. They're great for mixing paint, mixing washes, cleaning airbrushes, you name it. They're really durable. They can take pretty much any kind of solvent, and they're just epic win. Okay, so there's that. So let's see. Man, that just makes me angry. Hoping to see. Okay, so let's try it somewhere where it's not going to be as visible. Now this is where mixing the clear comes in handy. I'm not thinking this is dark enough. No, I need to add some more. Need to add some more of this here. Black. All right, so let's try it now. Yeah, it looks a little bit better, a little more opaque. If it's not opaque enough, it's not gonna. There we go. Now, see, by using that clear, capillary action will pull that in there a lot better. Flat, it just seems to, and I've attempted a couple of times to make a video explaining my technique in mixing my paint and why I do it and doing comparisons and stuff, and it just hasn't worked out. It keeps just not very good. So someday I'll do it, but this kind of gives you an idea. The paint flows around the details a whole lot better for me when I use clear in my Tamiya paint. So you see there, the details are popping out pretty good. I don't even think this is going to be actually seen because I'm doing everything closed up, but I wanted to test it. So there you go. Gives you some good definition there. So let's put some where it counts. Let's see. See, it just shoots right through there. That's what I'm looking for. Don't have to mess around a bunch with cleaning up with thinner and all that kind of stuff. See, it's really going through all the detail. I'm stoked. It's working out good. Around the details in this thing here. drill stick, and most of this, you're not even going to see it. It's going to be totally buttoned up. You're not going to see a bleeding thing, but it's there. And what little you'll be able to see will look halfway decent. These I'm going to dirty up pretty good. Okay. So you get the idea. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here. Let's get some around that. All right, so that's cool. So there's that. Then we'll do it. I'll do this one side and then I'll turn off the camera because you don't need to see me do it over and over again. See the way it just runs down? Whenever I find that whenever I'm using really flat paint, it tends to absorb into the surrounding flat surface. It doesn't give me good definition in the detail. And then when I try and clean it up, it just pretty much, see, look at the way that just shot around there. It just pretty much makes everything disappear. See, look at that. Man, I'm stoked. I'm stoked, people. I am stoked. So it's giving some good definition there. All right, so that side's done. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the other side. I'll get ready to do the decals on the instrument panels. All right, let's do some decals. First, get my decal water, room temperature. I don't warm it up or anything like that. Never have. Well, I've tried it, but I didn't see any difference between warming it up and just letting it sit at room temperature. So just haven't worried about it. So we'll get this decal loosened up here. While that one is getting loose, we'll get this one over here and ready. Now what I'm going to do is I'm using micro set as the setting solution. Now that's a recent discovery for me. I've known about it for, good lords, forever, but I never really used it. So last time I placed an order for some stuff, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this stuff out. Everybody sings its praises and sounds pretty good, so I'm going to try it out. And so far I like it. It works good. Micro sol, which is the part that melts the decal in to really get it to snuggle into the detail. It works, seems to work fine. I'm going to be using it on this this model, but the one I've really used most of the time in my modeling career, and I've used it forever, is Solvaset. That stuff just really works. It's pretty aggro, but it does work really well. Okay, the decal's loose, so I'm going to take my brush and brush the micro set on there, which will help it adhere better. And then we'll just generally use something like this. You know what? I think I may have to thumb it because, yeah, I generally don't like to touch all over them with my phalanges, but that's what we're doing in this case. Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Use this to make sure it's lined up properly, because I want to mainly focus on having it flush on the top. Okay, so that that looks pretty good. That looks pretty straight. So yeah, that looks pretty straight. So what I'm going to do is take the old handy dandy cotton bud and make sure it's pressed down really well. Still lined up. Okay, so we'll let that one dry. Should have had this one in the water. We'll let that dry, and then we'll let that dry, and then we'll put the micro sol on there. So I'm going to do the same exact thing with this, so I'm not going to video it. So I'll come back in a sec. Okay, so while the decals are drying and all that kind of stuff is setting up, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the motor. Now, I'm going to put this thing together, but I'm not actually going to paint it because you're not going to be seeing it. Now, I'm not going to paint the front because that's going to be behind the spinner. So I'm just going to put it together just so it fits where it's supposed to fit. And the only part I'll be painting is just the exhaust. So let's get the parts, which are, let's see, let's go with E56 and E7, which is quite a ways away from each other. So I'm going to cut these parts out and start getting them all cleaned up, and then we'll take a look at it. All right, these parts are all cleaned up. I've got the two halves together of the engine. Then we got to put this top part in place there. And the engine actually looks really good, especially for 1/48 for a kit like this. But I've never been much of one to display open panels and that kind of thing. If I was into dioramas and stuff, I'd probably do a lot more maintenance kind of things or whatever. But you know, I just don't. I don't do that. So therefore, I don't. I don't do that. Don't display stuff open. Now, here's something that I always find kind of amusing. They're really stressed to leave the propeller shaft movable. Now, I don't really get why that's a thing, because it's the only thing that moves on the whole kit. And you know, why is that? It's not like people play with them or anything, but hey, what do I know? Okay, so that's there. Now this part seems to be being a little fussy. Why is that? Well, let's do this first. Make sure that's nice and flat. And then seems to be a little bit better, but oh, there we go. That's a really super tight fit. And you want to make sure that is lined up properly, because you want that you want that prop shaft to be centered so your prop isn't all cockeyed. Well, there we go. Groovy. So now this part goes back here. Again, another nice snug fit. Put a little bit of cement there. A little bit of cement there. And make sure it's pushed in firmly like that. Splendid. All right, so then on this side here, this ultra tiny little piece goes right there, and there is a little tiny, you might be able to see it, a little bump, and there's a little tiny notch on this side of the part, so that way you know which way it goes. And it's kind of flat on that side too, so it'll fit flush up against that. I think this part is the starboard side discombobulator, but I'm not sure. Oh, jeez. These little things, these are the parts that are frustrating. There's no reason why that shouldn't just go on there and just sit there. But I'm all stinking shaky, and there we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, so then this part, there is a slightly elongated half circle there and a mating piece there, so that fits like that. So this one I can hold, not have to worry about getting glue on the outside. Not that it would matter anyway, because it's not going to be seen. Okay, like that. So that looks good. That's in place. Make sure it's lined up properly. All right, and that is that first part. So next, I need to cut E31, 33, 29, 28, 46, and 41. So I'm going to cut those off and get those all cleaned up. Okay, I got the next batch of parts ready to go, and these are starting to get kind of tiny. So this one, there is a part with a hole here, and then there's a square peg there. That square peg goes here, but that's kind of weird because the hole is not square. It's like square, but there's like a round hole in the middle. It's like it didn't release properly or something. Let me monkey around with this, see if I can get it cleaned out.
She's laughing.
All right, basically what I had to do is I had to bore that hole out a little bit and then round off this square peg. So that's kind of weird. That was looked like it was a mismold. I mean, you could see the outline of the square, but there was only just like a little bit of a round hole in it. So I'll just put it together as well, as good as I can, and it'll have to do. Fortunately, like I said, it's not going to be visible because I'm not doing it with the engine covers open. So I'm going to hold this in place, try and glue it. Oh man, it's just... it's kind of a shame. So I'm going to have to let that dry for a minute because I don't want it to pop loose once I get it where it needs to be. That's just kind of weird. All right, so I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and put this piece in here. This is E46, and it fits into that slot there, like that. So that fits really well. And then this part here fits in there like that. So, whoops. All right, so I've got this part in position here, but let's see, these little teeny tiny hose looking things right here go there. So I think what I'll do here, let's see, these will help space this properly. Oh yeah. Now this is one of those parts that it doesn't have a real positive. This one here, it's kind of wobbly. So hopefully it will fit properly and line up as it should. I'm going to take a big old fat risk. You know what? Let's see if it'll just really... make sure that's all squeezed in there like that. It's kind of tapered. The part is tapered. So yeah, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to glue this part in here. And then once that sets up for a minute, then I'll put these little hoses on. So let's do a little quick test fit here. Okay, so this goes there and there. Oh yeah, just like that. That is stellar. Put a little cement there. A little cement, whoa, or a lot of cement there. And that should be cool. So then we'll take this other one here, do the same thing. You know what? I need to pick it up at a better angle. This is tedious here. Sorry it's taking so long, folks, but I think this is one of those things I need to show that it can actually be done. Once you get the glue on there, you can kind of adjust it. Okay, so that looks good. So hopefully, once we get that into the fuselage, it'll fit properly. Because if not, I'm going to be pretty sad. But we shall see. Looks good though. All right, so the last part here is this one. There is a little groove on the bottom that fits in that little tab right there. So we'll take this, hold it in place, hopefully. Man, I'm just bumbling around tonight, folks. These little parts can really be something. Okay, let's put that, hold it for a second. Oh, it's lined up, good. All right, looks good. All right, so that's that part. So the next part is actually mounting this to this. So I need to see where the contact points are in order to know where to scrape some paint off so the glue adheres properly to this stuff in here. So it looks like let's get these parts cut off. So we got E18 and E53. Okay, 53. So I'm going to cut these off and clean them up. Okay, so I'm going to try and make this as easy as possible. So since I'm doing this with the engine bay open, there's a few things that have to be done. So on the instructions on page, I think it's 4. Okay, so on page 4, you assemble the engine, and then for the closed engine and gun cowling, it says to go to page 10. So page 10, this is it, and that doesn't make a bit of sense. However, page 11 does make things clear. So, well, somewhat clear. Clear as mud. So here's what we need to do. Okay, we built the engine. Now I cut off the engine mounting parts. Those are not used when mounting the engine and closing it all up, having everything closed. So there's a few things that have to be done to the engine to get it ready. One of them is you're supposed to carve or sand the front of the engine block right here, which I've done with 220 sanding stick. Okay, you don't have to be too super careful because it's going to be closed up. You just need to make sure you get some material off there. May have to sand some more, but we'll see once we get everything together. Okay, so the engine That's the engine. Now, earlier in the instructions, when it's showing mounting the engine, this kind of gives you a little bit better idea. Again, it's kind of out of order because it's showing all this on page 11, but on page 10, or for closed nose, see page 10, it's just kind of weird. So hopefully this will work out the way I think it is. But anyway, so that part's done. Then also supposed to cut off these two tabs right here on top of the gun deck or whatever it is. So I've already cut those off. So that's ready to go. Now the only other thing that needs to be done before you can put the fuselage halves together is mount the exhaust parts. Now it does not tell you where or how to mount the exhaust parts. Okay, it shows you how to do it here. Okay, that's showing the engine installed with the motor mounts and all that kind of stuff. So each side takes 5 pieces of E39, and then the last one is E38. So it appears that you're supposed to glue those on according to this illustration here, page 11, that those need to be glued on before you put everything together. So that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start cutting off all these exhaust parts and get those ready. Okay, once you've gotten the first one in place, the next ones are kind of easy because you can just kind of lay it on top of the other one. Apply your cement and it'll kind of pull it down into place. Just make sure it's bottomed out good. Then you just take your next one, drop it in like that. A little cement. See how it just kind of pulls it into place? That's the magic. Tamiya extra thin. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do both sides of that. Come back. Next one is number 38, E38, and that one is shaped quite a bit differently because it's designed to go in last and be able to be put into place if the engine is already in the fuselage. It's got a different setup for mounting it. So there you go. So there's that one. So I'll do the other side. All right, now I didn't show it because it was quite harrowing, but I got the tail wheel assembled. I'm letting that dry. So all the components are together that need to be together to put the fuselage halves together. So with that, I'm going to call this video done because I think it's getting over long. So when we come back, we will put all of this mess together. And it should be fun. So anyway, that's it. That is the end of part 2 of the Eduard 148 scale BF 109 E3 weekend edition. So I hope this wasn't too long and boring. Hopefully it'll be helpful for somebody in the future. But anyway, I'd appreciate any comments you might have. Again, if you've had any experience with this particular kit, put them in the comments section down below. I'll get back with you. Chop, chop. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.